So now we get up to Port Adelaide. So Port Adelaide went on a massive run throughout the middle of the season with about 13 wins in a row, I believe. Then went on a 4-game losing streak. Finished the season okay, the home and away season, but the finals were pretty much a laughing stock for Port Adelaide. They had a terrible final series, out in straight sets. They did have a pretty good trade period. They got Ivan Soldo. They also got Radikalia. They did pick up Jordan Sweet and Brendan Zirk-Thatcher as well. We do have the best 23 on screen right now. And we have left out Brendan Zirk-Thatcher. I'll ask your more of an opinion on this. Because we kind of both said that he's not their best 23. We've kind of went Mackenzie over him. Have you given a reason as to why?
I just think he's shown over the last couple of years how good of a defender he actually is, Mackenzie. Ever since he changed roles when he went to Port Adelaide. But Zirk-Thatcher, he leaks too many goals. Doesn't matter who he plays on, he just leaks too many goals, in my opinion. He's good for it. And I think playing with Aaliyah, bringing in Radikalia will help Aaliyah be more the intercept marker and help Mackenzie out as well.
Say that 5 times without getting tongue-tied.
Radikalia and Aaliyah, Mackenzie, bloody hell, it's going to be good for the commentators next season.
Now, I think Soldo's a very good pickup. Like I have said a lot, though, I think it's very harsh on Jordan Sweet. He was expected to be getting the best spot. The ruck role is going to be the best 23 every week. But Ivan Soldo all of a sudden got recruited to the club, and now Jordan Sweet's not in their best team. We also have the likes of Boak out of the team, along with Finlayson and Ollie Lord. Lord could very well be in this team if it wasn't for the fact that Georgiades was injured all of last year. So Finlayson, I think, is fifth fiddle for tall forwards now.
Yeah.
He's out of it altogether. And that's why we couldn't put Jordan Sweet in the interchange bench, because they can't play Soldo, Sweet, Georgiades, Dixon, and Marshall.
Yeah.
That's way too many talls. And Finlayson doesn't get into that team either. So that's why we've gone with that sort of list. For Port Adelaide, as a pass mark, I have put them... Sorry, prediction is about 5th to 8th. I kind of think they got on that run last year, and that really got them to the top 4. I think they definitely overcompensated for how they played. So I've got them about 5th to 8th, but I do think a pass mark for Port Adelaide, considering how they did last season, has to be a prelim final. And at this stage, I think if Ken Hinckley doesn't get him even into deep finals, I think he's the second most under pressure coach going into next year.
Yeah, I think you're looking at this team. Wines needs to show up, in my opinion. He's the most under pressure player at Port Adelaide next season, I believe. He just lost it ever since the Brownlow year, and I don't know why that is. Dixon is also under pressure. He's got too many injuries, and to be honest, I'm surprised he got another year. I think Lord is going to play a bit of a role next season for us. Willem Drew, I think, needs to just play the lockdown role of a tagger. It does work, as we've seen. It does work, and I've got them predicting about the same as you, 5th to 8th, and their pass marks prelim. Ken Hinckley needs to win some finals, and they can't go out again in straight sets if Port Adelaide somehow get to top 4.
Yeah. I think that's a fair enough call. So after that, though, we get to Richmond. So Richmond have already been a big talking point throughout the trade period and towards the end of the season. Obviously, a lot of people kind of predicted at the start of last season with the acquisitions of Taranto and Hopper that they could be making finals and could actually be doing some bit of damage. But the fact is that they did have a bit of injuries coming through. Tom Lynch was a massive loss for them. But now we've seen a couple of players like Rewald and Cochin retire. So 2 players who, look, I believe probably should have retired because they were getting up there and they weren't bringing a lot. But now their experience has really dropped off. Their defence does hold out. And I think Gibcus coming back after a season-long layoff with injury is actually a really big get for them. But there were a lot of talk, and I kind of agree that this team doesn't look as it once was. This team is a very struggling team. Yeah. It's quite a skinny team, and we obviously saw... if they get a couple of injuries, their depth is razor thin. It is very, very thin. The fact is that Dustin Martin had a really good year last year, and he was one of their best players, and that shouldn't be the case at his age.
No.
They did get up one player, which is Jacob Kaczynski from Hawthorn, which I think is a good acquisition. Is it going to be a massive change? I don't think so. We'll see how he goes. Maybe a new environment may help him. But I think it's going to be a tough year for Richmond. The fact that we've got Ryan, Ralph Smith in that team, I don't think really would be in their best 23 in most AFL sides. I think that Richmond are in for a tough year. I think around, honestly, bottom 4. That may be a bit harsh to say. And I do think that this team does have enough to push them, around 12th. But honestly, I don't see any higher than 12th for Richmond this year.
Yeah, I'm looking at this team. Like, you've got the experienced players in Floston and Grimes. Yeah, Martin. Bolton needs to play well next season, which he has done in the last couple of years. Lynch somehow needs to get on the field. Dan Curtis needs to stop getting suspended. It's just very hard to look at that team and think that they're going to kick a winning score, in my opinion. Like, Noel Cumberland, I don't believe that he should have been dropped as many times as he did last year. I think that was a bit harsh on him.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more potent small forwards.
And he was, and he's a very accurate kick.
Yeah.
I think another year under Gipkis, it's not getting a new player in Gipkis, how he was injured all of last year. They don't have a lot of run in that team, in my opinion. Like, you've got Rioli, you got Bolton, maybe Pickett. You don't have a lot of run in that team, and that's what scares me at the moment for them. And
they're very one-paced.
They're very one-paced, and that midfield shows that they don't have a lot of experience in that team if they get a few injuries, and that's why I think they are bottom 4, and that's my prediction. And
I think a pass mark. I thought I should say that. I think around 10 to 14.
Yeah, I think that's a pass mark for them. They need to make the MCG a fortress like it used to be, and they're just the team that they have. I just don't think it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's... So I think, like you said, Richmond are in for a bit of a tough year going into next season. After that, though, we get to one of the surprise packets of 2023, which was St Kilda. So now we get to St Kilda, who actually picked up a couple of players in the trade period, one being Liam Henry, the other one being Paddy Dow. Both players, I believe, go straight into the 23 start of next season. We do have the best 23 on screen right now. I think the likes of Sinclair will be getting a little bit more midfield time. We saw at times throughout the season that Sinclair, when he went midfield, was actually quite good in there. I think there was at times that St Kilda kind of overachieved in a lot of times, especially at the start of the year. And this team just struggles to score. Yeah. That's what I think their issue is. I think that's always been an issue with the Ross Lyon coach sides. I do think the acquisitions of Liam, Henry and Dow are actually really good for them. I do think their midfield run's very thin, though. Obviously, having Steele and Crouch and Sinclair. After that, it's kind of bare. I mean, Windhager, I guess, can go through there. But, I mean, Clark's more of a wingman. Higgins, Owens, Philippou, they're not midfielders at all, like looking at their forward line. Brad Hill's a wingman, so is Mason Wood. Maybe they can play Mason Wood through the midfield, see how he goes. He's a big-bodied player. But at the end of the day, I think that's where St Kilda will struggle. St Kilda, obviously, in defence, do look very solid, though. And I do think that Rowan Marshall is one of the best ruckmen in the comp, so he does almost act like an extra midfielder. But at this stage, looking at St Kilda's list, looking at their team, I think a prediction for them going into next season is around just outside the 8. I think 9 to 12, probably around fair enough call for them. I do think, though, that the fact that they made finals last year, last season, that they should be competing for finals once again. I think that is a pass mark for them. And if their defence can hold up very well and they can find a way forward and get Max King some goals, but also not just focus on Max King, actually go to these other players, because that's what their issue was last year. At the start of the season, they went to other forwards, but then when Max King came back into the side, they just focused 100% on him.
Yeah.
So if they can find other avenues towards goal, I think St Kilda can have a chance to push to finals, but at this stage, I think they're missing. Yeah,
you're looking at that team. It's a solid defence, like we've seen all last couple of seasons with Wilkie, Howard, and Battle. Wanganeen Malera was playing really well last season, so was Brad Hill, and they maybe another pre-season into them will benefit them. The Liam Henry and Paddy Dow, it's what they needed. They needed a bit more pace and they needed a bit more grunt in the midfield. I was surprised they didn't really try and go harder for some forwards, but those forwards were pretty set of where they wanted to go, so you can see why they didn't want to go to St Kilda. It's hard to say where they're going to finish. I've got them predicting just outside the 8, like you do, and I think a pass mark is finals. And with Marshall, with their midfield and Marshall, I think they can do that. But like we've been saying, they don't have any avenues to goal as much as they really should.
Yeah, if it's not Max King, they really struggle to get a score.
And I think, like you said, at the start of the last season, they were good at spreading it around. But once Max King came in and Membry went out, he just didn't play a lot, Membry, and they just kept going to King, and it was predictable.
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of teams do fumble at times. We even saw Sydney at times when Buddy Franklin was there. They were almost a better side without him, especially at times because they were a lot more unpredictable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think obviously they're a better team with Max King in the side, but they need to find more avenues to goal.
Yeah.
So after that, though, we get to the Sydney Swans. So, obviously, my team, the Sydney Swans. Let's take a look at this. Probably, I think they won the trade period. I know a lot of people say that Essendon did, but those people are wrong. Because Sydney did, obviously. I mean, look at the pickups. All 4 of their recruits are in their best 23. You've got the likes of Hamling, who goes straight into the defence. Grundy, Adams, midfield, obviously. Jordan, he's arguably in the midfield, or maybe on the wing, but I've put him on the bench at this stage. I think that's fair enough call. I mean, Sydney have had to leave out the likes of Wicks, Roberts. Obviously, Mills will be out with injury. I think Sydney have got a really good lineup here. And obviously, Melican's not in this team, which he was in the final and had a really good game in the game against Carlton. He would be out, though. I think that Hamling just gets the first cab off the rank. I think he gets first go. I think AFL or Fox Sports or something did a prediction of the Swans team as well when they did them all. When they had Cunningham out the side, I think that's completely wrong. He had a massive year last year for the Swans, really underrated year playing as a small defender. Had a really good game, I remember, against Charlie Cameron, kept him to no goals, basically no touches. So I think he's a really big player for them going into next year with a lot of dangerous small forwards. I think the acquisition of Adams was really good to help their midfield depth. And I think that Sydney has obviously really done well with not only recruitment this time, but obviously in previous seasons they've had to use the younger players, and we see players like Sheldrick in this lineup. So that's who we've got in there, to show that there's a lot of there's quite a bit of depth with Sydney. Now, obviously at the start of the season they had a lot of injuries. When they all came back at the end of the season, they were a different side.
Yeah.
So with these recruits, if Sydney can stay healthy, I think a pass mark has to be top 4. I think that that's a fair enough call to say, because this is a lineup that's really, really good. They've got a forward line now with 3 forwards who I think that's the one question mark of the Swans is their tall forward line. I think all 3 of them fit into the best 23, but this will be the first time, basically. I mean, obviously halfway through the season they had to kind of play it for the first time ever without Buddy Franklin. So with a full pre-season, I think this is a really big talking point. But I do think the Swans, there is one thing they do lack, and that's a defensive forward pressure. Because the only one who brings that on this lineup is Papley. So Sam Wicks at this stage of recording hasn't been signed to the Swans yet.
Yeah.
But Sydney really do lack a small forward line defensive pressure group, which is interesting because Sydney I think they're one of the best pressure sides in the comp last year.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that small forward line. I still think that's the forward line they'll go with at this stage. I think a pass mark for the Swans with this team that they've got is about a prelim final.
Yeah.
So I think they can go further. I honestly think this team can challenge for the premiership. And that's not me just saying that because I'm a Swan supporter. Honestly, that's me saying that this team can challenge because this team is very well structured up.
Yeah.
And if they can stay fit, I think they're every chance. But obviously, a little bit less biased. Let's listen to what your thoughts are.
I think, you're looking at that team, you think they're probably going to be in their best 23, all the recruits they got. I think it's going to be interesting what sort of role Blakey plays. Because obviously he had to actually play on someone a few times last year because there were so many injuries to their back line. And I think it was going to free him up because how he is that intercept player. And I think a year into Gordon on the wing, another pre-season to Campbell playing.
Campbell's going to be interesting because
Campbell's
Golden obviously had a massive year, but Campbell had a really good year for the
Yeah.
Swans, but obviously was overshadowed by Golden.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to be an interesting pre-season for Hayward. He didn't do that well in a lot of games last year, and I think because of the amount of injuries to a lot of the to Buddy and a few other players in their forward half that he kept getting games.
Yeah.
I think that he shouldn't have got as many games as he should have, and it's going to be interesting to what happens. And because, like you said, he doesn't bring a lot of forward pressure as well. So if he's not kicking goals, he's not doing much.
Yeah.
I've got them finishing in the top 4. I think they should be. With the team that they have on paper, it seems like it has to be. I think a pass mark is the prelim.
Did you just look at my predictions, or
no? They just you look at that list. I think having an actual experienced ruckman, with obviously with Hickey retiring, is good for him. I don't think Peter Ladham's would be that player.
I think the Swans kind of see him now as a second ruck.
Yeah.
Which I think now Hayden McLean's has overtaken him.
Yeah,
anyway.
I think it was a big mistake for him to. I know Port Adelaide wanted to get rid of him, but Sydney wasn't the position that he needed to go to.
Well, I think it was at the time, but I think now he's very close to being out of that side.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my prediction.
So both of us think that Sydney top 4 bound at this stage. I think that's a fair enough call. But after that, we move to the other end of the ladder where we have the West Coast Eagles. So, of course, West Coast are up next. Really disappointing year. I mean, that's an understatement. Very surprised that Adam Simpson kept his job. I didn't actually see that coming. I thought for sure they would have thought for a different change. West Coast did very well in the trade period. The fact that they picked up 2 players and didn't lose anyone is absolutely massive for them. And on paper, looking at this team right now, it's not the worst team.
No.
However, the issue isn't the team on paper, the best 22. It's the fact if they can get them on the park.
Yeah, because they get so many injuries.
Because they get so many injuries. If you look at this team right now, they actually have a pretty good lineup. And obviously with the draft coming, if they pick up Harley Reid, he fits into that team quite nicely. But again, like we said, their issue isn't having like a nice lineup on paper. It's the fact that they can't get them on the field.
Yeah.
However, in saying that, I think that West Coast actually have some upside here. You can see McGovern and Barris actually line up to be very good defensive duo. Their midfield shapes up pretty nicely with Yo, Sheed and Kelly. Obviously, Yo and Sheed were injured for a lot of the year, so they didn't have that. But Tim Kelly had a massive year for the Eagles. And he was one of the only few players who did. Oscar Allen, he had a really good year for West Coast. He had kicked 50-plus goals in a side that was woeful. And there were times as well where Oscar Allen had to go back because the defensive structure was so lost and so injured that he had to go and play in defensive half. Like, how many forwards kicking 50-plus goals have to go and play back half the time? That's unheard of. Their small forward line of Ryan, Noah Long, and Cripps, I think, can combine for some good targets up forward. I think the acquisition of Flynn is actually very good. We have got Bailey Williams in the team, even though he played ruck for a lot of last year. I still think he does fit into their best team. We picked Elijah Hewitt on the bench. Petruccelli at this stage is our sub, but that can obviously change. I think West Coast, a pass mark for them is to not finish on the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah.
I think that's a pass mark. And I think they actually can do it. I think, on paper, looking at them in North Melbourne, I actually give West Coast the upper hand here. Yeah. That's my thoughts. And I think my prediction, I don't think they finish anywhere outside the top 4. I think, outside the bottom 4. This is where they get between 16th and 18th. That's my prediction for West Coast. Yeah. Even though I think that their team on paper isn't the worst, I don't think they're going to be rising too high in 2024.
No. Looking at that list, I think it was great for West Coast that they signed Barras. I think it's a great sign of leadership for it, and I think they need to. They need to get some more experience, more youth midfielders like Jimby and Hewitt, Petruccelli. They need to get them into the midfield a bit more to give them a different look. Because Kelly, Yo, Sheed give them a lot of the same. So I think they just need a bit more through the midfield. But looking at the team, it's not the worst. It doesn't look as bad as some other teams. They've got a lot of experience in that team, which is good. I I still think that they need to. They just need some more experience. Need some more youth coming through.
Yeah, because talented youth.
Yeah, talented youth. Because looking at that team, most of that's gonna go within 3 years. Yeah. Most of it's gone. So, and they just can't afford to get injuries to these players.
Yeah.
And I've still got them in the bottom 4. Their pass mark is to win more games than they did last year, and they need to win some games at home. Give the home fans something to enjoy.
Yeah, because they are very loyal. They had some pretty good crowds last year for a team that was bloody woeful and lost many games by over 100 points.
Yeah, they need to just give some love to their home fans. That's what I think they need to do.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough pass mark for them. But finally, we move to the Western Bulldogs. So Western Bulldogs are last on the list. Very interesting side. Have probably been one of the most frustrating teams in recent times. The list speaks for itself. A very good midfield, one of the best, with one of the best players in Bontempelli. Their forward line is very good. Their defence can be shaky at times, but they do have almost 2 All-Australian halfbacks and some very good key position defenders. But Western Bulldogs have disappointed many of us every year for the last 3 or 4, basically since their premiership in 2016.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2021 they made the grand final. Basically since 2021, I would say they have been very disappointing. So this is the best 23 we came up with. They did pick up a few recruits. One was James Harms, the other one being Nick Caulfield. At this stage, Caulfield was out of the side. Basically, just at this stage, he's out of the side. We'll see if he has a good pre-season. He may well be in their best 23. James Harms scraped into this team by a coat of paint. Johannesson, we've put it as a sub because I think that's some good run. On paper, Western Bulldogs should be making finals. I think that's a very nice statement to say. We do have Smith in the midfield, and that's where he needs to be playing. Yeah. That's his position.
Yeah.
And if they want him to stay next year, he needs to be in that midfield every week.
Yeah.
And he should be in there. He's a good enough player to be in that midfield. So that's where I've got him there. However, looking at my predictions, I just don't trust the Bulldogs, so I've got them finishing just outside the 8.
Yeah.
I've got them between about 9 and 12 yet again as they finished last season. I have a pass mark for them, which is finals, and I think that's 100% the case. As we've said throughout this entire series of videos, Justin Longmuir, Ken Hinkley, other under-pressure coaches, and I think Luke Beveridge joins that list as well.
Yeah.
If they don't make finals, he doesn't have a job at the Bulldogs in 2025.
No. Looking at this team, they've got too many midfielders to fit into a team.
Yeah, well, true.
And that's why Bailey Smith is getting rumoured that he wants to leave, and it will happen all next season if he's not in that midfield. And a lot of them are the same sort of player that play through the midfield, and
except for Bailey Smith, he's definitely brings something different. They want to put him in there.
Yeah, and they don't want to do it. And another pretty good pre-season into Ugle Hagen, I think, is going to be beneficial for him. I don't think they have enough small forwards.
It's only
Waitman, and it's very tough to struggle to see how they're gonna structure this team. I'm actually thinking that they're gonna make finals. I've got them predicting about 6 to 9. I think they've pass mark is a semi-final. I think they need to win at least one final. Keep Beveridge for another year if that's desperately what they want. They've got the team. They just don't structure it up properly for them to win.
Well, when you think about Western Bulldogs lineup, it's very similar to how the All-Australian lines up. You know how before last year they just put a bunch of midfielders in positions they don't fit in, like McRae, like Treloar. You know, they're not Treloar's not really a wingman, and McRae's not really a half forward.
Yeah.
But that's basically where they have to put them because they're good enough to be in any AFL side. They don't want to lose them, but at the end of the day, they're have to play in different positions that aren't which are foreign to them.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, that's basically all the predictions we have, guys, looking at the early part of the very early part of the next season, I would say. We're still in 2023, of course. We'll obviously be doing more predictions and stuff as the season gets a lot closer. We'll still obviously have the draft to take a look at, and there could be some players being picked up in the listed free agency and obviously the supplement players that can be picked up. But at this stage, just after the trade period, I thought it'd be a good idea, or we thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at the best 23 that we could actually put into the teams at this stage. If you have any differing thoughts or any opinions, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below. And Yeah, thanks for watching this series of videos, guys. That's all from us, so we'll catch us all next time.
See you later, guys.